are you?
I am well. How are you?
I'm a little tired today, but we're going to push through though.
Okay.
Let me get this little puff together. All right, there we go.
Oh man, I'm so excited. I'm so excited about our time together.
Welcome to Theology Talk, you like or not. I am your creator, curator, investigator, sometime instigator, but definitely a liberator, Rev to say. And for a few moments of your sacred time in this sacred space, I invite you to tune in as we talk good, talk back, talk loud, talk smack, talk life and love, talk true, talk music, talk art, talk faith, hope, peace, joy, talk justice, talk God. Let's talk.
I am so excited to be sitting with Dr. Lakara Foster. We met a year ago in October in her hometown where she was born and raised in NOLA, one of my favorite cities, New Orleans.
Yes.
And we just had a good old time. I had never encountered her, and we later on learned not only are we Virgo sisters,
Yes.
We are also graduates of the Interdenominational Theological Center. Shout out to ITCI for, doing great things with women of color, because we are here and we are ready. Dr. Foster, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
How are you today?
I am good. It's a Monday. It's a Monday. So I feel like on Monday, I gotta rev this thing up on Monday. But otherwise, I have no complaints. We're getting to the tail end of 2020, and listen, that's a shout all by itself. Okay.
Let's talk about it, okay? Because you have been such a blessing to me following you and your social media accounts. 2020 is not canceled.
It's not canceled.
Prophetic, always just ready to give to the community in a way that is nourishing and that remind us to be always resting, but also alert.
Yes, I like that.
But also resting at the same time. Please share with us. Just tell the people what is it that you do?
Okay. Well, I'm Dr. Lakara Foster. I am a minister, and I'm also a medium. And I also own a metaphysical store here in Atlanta, Georgia. And most people, they ask, what's a medium? What's a psychic? What's a psychic medium? And I tell people my psychic abilities allow me to be able to see things that have happened, are happening, or will happen. And my mediumship ability allows me to be able to connect to our departed loved ones. Most of the time they're coming through to bring us messages, messages that hopefully will bring us some healing, some closure, and some peace.
And when did you tap into that gift? What's the story behind you finally discovering it, and also living to it? Because I would imagine that in itself could be a scary thing. Give you those feelings. I need to be mindful of that. But what was the feeling for you when you tapped into that gift?
I think as a child, for me, I just kind of thought that everybody could hear things that, or could see things, and it didn't. And I believe being from New Orleans, it, was kind of a normalized thing, the things that I tell people all the time, elementary school, middle school, we always took a trip to the graveyard. Nobody else is doing that, right? But there were people and ideas that they wanted to learn as far as who we are as a culture. So even as a kid, I would be able to know things were going to happen or see things that were going to happen. And I just really thought it was a part of the normal experience until I got a little bit older and discovered that not everybody around me was seeing the same things that I was seeing. And even then, it never made me feel strange. I believe it just was, I always just considered it a gift, the same way somebody can sing or the way somebody can fix a car, or I just had a leak in my basement and I swear this lady came and her crew and they just did what they, that's a gift, And so for me, no one else, felt weird or peculiar or odd about their gift. And so that emotion or feeling just was never one that I had about this gift.
And And how did your family receive you or nurture that gift in you?
Well, my father is gifted as well, right? My mom is as well, to a certain extent. My father is, people come to him in dreams. People who have departed don't necessarily don't normally come to me in dreams, but they do come to him in dreams with messages. And so my mom's aunt was gifted. And so it just runs through the line. So I don't think that, I don't know if they were necessarily surprised as much as it was just kind of like, okay, she's the one who has it, or she's the one that, was next in line for it. So, and they just, just very encouraging and just, it's just love. Like, I don't think it's anything strange or odd or, weird or anything like that.
Share with the people, Dr. Foster, some of the greatest experience that you've had in operating in your gift, and some of the ones that you were apprehensive about.
I have so many stories, because what I do know is as a minister, my background is in therapy, and as a medium, I always tell people there are layers to healing, right? And it's so interesting because now I actually have like therapists, practicing licensed therapists who will send their clients to me, who will say like they need to get a breakthrough, or they need this, or they're stuck right here, and I feel like you can help them. And we like had really great success in partnering, in partnering with these other professionals. And I think, but one story that always kind of sticks out for me, and there's so many, I was in New Orleans and I was doing a show, and it was my first time actually doing like this live event where it was like 100 and something people there. And it was just like, okay, we're going to do this. And there were 3 ladies that were sitting in the front row. They was just sitting there. They just got their hands crossed and they just like, I won't believe none of this. And so I was kind of like, oh God, like, why would you bring them to the show? Like, why? But anyway, so they come and they're sitting down, and I start talking to them, and I'm telling them that their sister is in the room. And I'm telling them, that they had just gone on a cruise and all of these things. And I'm giving them the information that the sister's giving me. And I asked the woman, one of the older ladies, I said, how do you connect to the number 3 and a baby? Because there was a baby like following me around, if you will, and also to the number 3. So she says, well, my daughter died when she was 3 months old. And I said, your sister wants you to know, because that sister was the one that passed, that the daughter, the child was with her, and that, on the other side, like everybody's fine, And so this woman tells me, she says, my daughter died 50 years ago, and this is the first moment that I have had peace around her passing.
Wow.
I'm not even 50 years old.
Wow.
Right. So it's kind of like we had to wait, all of this time to intersect at this moment, but a moment that spirit would see for her to get peace, the peace that she needed, right? After all this time, knowing that she came in as a non-believer, knowing that she came in and it was so funny for them to even say like, we didn't believe in this. We didn't believe that it would be possible. This goes against what we, were taught. This goes against the religion. But it's so funny because she says, but I was at home and I told my sister, if this is real, right, like you'll come through today, right? And she said, and as I'm saying that, she's like, I smell my sister's perfume. She's like, I'm sitting there and I'm getting dressed for the show. She said, and I smell. So I'm like, it's so funny. Like people will be like, well, I don't believe, but then they already have these confirmations even before, beforehand. And that to me kind of really sticks out as one of the stories that was just kind of like, for me to say, this is why I do what I do. Like to bring that level of healing, to bring that level of closure and peace. Like, this is why I do what I do.
Yeah, I'm so glad that you mentioned this particular story, because in the storyline you mentioned how this goes against my religion, our belief, and if anybody knows, the ITC is a seminarian for ministers of various African faith background come together in this consortium to get men's doctoral degrees. And so I imagine, especially for the Black church in particular, people of color, how these gifts that are African tradition, right? We've always had people in the community, in the village, who operated in these gifts. And time came, we gave up those things were taken from us. Yes. see it as black magic. How do you, number one, explain to the people how you can be this medium and this minister, but also you married the two?
For me, I always say, one is I didn't grow up in the church, right? So I made the choice to really start going to church as a grown up, as an adult, because I really wanted to know who Jesus was. I'm like, okay, who's Jesus walking on water? He turned the water to wine. And that's my favorite. And, like all of these things. So he obviously was very powerful in what he was what he was able to do. But the thing I believe that kind of really cemented my desire to want to know more was that Jesus said, greater works will you do. And so for me, it was so what are the greater works that I'm supposed to do? And knowing that I had this gift, and as a Virgo, you might be able to identify, it's like we have like these compartmentalized areas in our life, right? So I had all these different compartments in my life, and Jesus, God was like, listen, like you're going to marry all of this, right? You're going to put all of this together, because that to me, what God was showing me was integrity, right? For it to be integral. And it's not, and I don't believe that I was hiding anything, I never believed that I was hiding. It was just like, this is what I do, and this is what I do, and this is what I do. But none of them were married, so to speak. So of course, going to ITCI, it was so interesting. Just, I could go on and on about just kind of seeing God's hand and at work in getting me to this place. And so I signed up for school. And I'm like, they're talking about these projects that we're going to have to do as a part of our, doctoral program. And I am like, oh, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to do mine on Black women leadership in the church. And Spirit was like, no, you ain't.
No, you ain't.
On this gift, right? And so I was like, and it was so interesting to me, like being with all of these like other, pastors and preachers and ministers, and a lot of them, they had their own churches and they had their own congregation, and their own beliefs and all of these things, and we're all in the cohort together, and it was so interesting because now I'm getting ready to have to present what I'm getting ready to do this thing on. But before I do that, I'm sitting in the back with one of my really close classmates, and I'm like, Emmett, like, check this out, right? So let me ask you a question. And everybody's up there presenting, and we're in the back, like, it seems like we're goofing off, but I'm really trying to get some information. And I say to him, how do you feel about like psychics or mediums or whatever? And he's like, oh yeah, I think it's a bunch of BS. Like, I don't believe in it. Da, da, da. And I was like, really? He's like, yeah. I said, well, how do you think the church would feel about, And he was like, oh no, like that would be demonized and that would be da, da, da. And I was like, really? He's like, yeah. He was like, it's all just a crockable or whatever. And I was like, wow. I was like, well, your grandmother's here right now, right? And he's like, what? Right. And I started telling him, I'm like, yeah, I was like, yeah, your grandmother says like, you've been listening to this pastor, and it's almost like you're mimicking this pastor, but you have to find your own voice. And I'm telling all of these things, and I bring up the baby. I said, you and your wife lost the baby. I said, but your grandmother has, the baby's with your grandmother, and your grandmother needs your wife to know, like, it was no fault of her own. Like, she's been carrying this guilt around the loss of this baby, but she needs to be relieved from this guilt. So he's crying, like he gets up and he's crying, and he like walks out, and he comes back a little while later, and he's like, what are you doing here? Like, he's like, do you realize, he's like, you are about to flip this thing on its head as we know it. And while I don't believe that has ever been my mission, my, anything, it's just like, no, God is like, no, you're going to do this. Right. And I'm like, okay, God, like, I'm saying yes, and I'm going to do this because it's bigger than me. And what God was showing me really was that there are so many people who are stuck, right? Who are stuck in their grief, right? Stuck at the moment that big mama died, and they can't get past this, and God needs to use them. And God is like, I can't use them until you free them.
I feel like I need to take breath.
Yeah. And really, it was like, I was in church one day, and I was, because I talked to God just like I'm having this conversation with you, and I'm always asking questions, and I'm like, God, you gotta give me this, or you gotta show me this. And I was getting ready to start doing interviews, and I just released the gift on YouTube and stuff, and I'm like, okay, God, you gotta make it make sense. to the people, right? It don't have to make sense to me because I'm doing it, you know, and I've been doing it for 20 plus years, but I have to be able to make them understand. And I'm at a funeral and God says, and what's so weird about it is I feel the guy there, right? And I'm feeling him next to his partner. And so one of my friends texts me and goes, the guy whose name he died, and he says, is Marlon here? And I said, yes, Marlon is here, right? And I said, I feel him here while we're here. And I hear God say, I promise my people eternal life. How are they going to know that I have kept my promise if the medium doesn't demonstrate the gift? Mm. And that for me was so freeing. It was like, I am here to demonstrate God's promise. I believe we're all here to demonstrate God's promise. That's just what, you know, for me, what I'm here to do. That's my thing. And I think it's for us to all figure out this whole purpose thing, this whole, why am I here? This whole, what is this life about? I believe from this perspective, it is about demonstrating God's promise.
What a gift to have. How has the church supported your gift? And where do you feel the resistance?
You know, my church has been, I'll tell you from the beginning, you know, and I've said this, like I was becoming a minister. I, you know, got licensed in 2018 and I knew I was getting licensed in June, but I also knew that I had been filming episodes for my show, The Gift, that was going to be airing in October. And I was like, okay, I got to tell my bishop, like, because I don't want this to catch him off guard. And I was like, and if he, you know, feels like I shouldn't be a minister in his church. Like, I'm like, I get it. You know what I mean? Like, and so he and we were at a fundraiser and we were talking and I was like, you know, I want to share something with you. And this is what I'm doing. This is my gift. And it's like, I feel like, but it's so weird because I feel like he always knew that there was something. I don't know that he knew that he could put his finger on it, so to speak. And I asked him, I said, you know, do you want me to sit down? Do you want me to give the collar back? And he says, no, I want you to walk in the tension of what it means to be a minister and a medium. And I was like, wow, like I thought that was such an amazing gift, you know, in and of itself, to say, no, like you have to, you know, figure this piece out. And then he started telling me this story. And I'm going to kind of paraphrase the story, but he's telling me these two stories of like these pastors and they're walking and they encounter this woman and this woman says, you know, oh my gosh, like, you know, I love you so much. I listen to your sermons all the time and she's just praising them. He said, and they just kept walking. He said, and then they kept walking. He said, they ran into another woman and the woman starts saying, you know, oh my gosh, I think you all are frauds. And I think you all you do is this and all you do is that. And she's bashing them. And all he did was kept walking. And so he was like, what I'm telling you on this journey is to just keep walking, right? He's like, don't worry about the praise. Don't worry about the criticism. Don't worry. He says, just keep walking.
Keep walking.
Keep walking, right? I got chills thinking about it. And it was so profound because that is what I have found myself doing. You know, there was, you know, I've been celebrated in articles and news features and all of these things. And then I was then talked about on in the Christian Post, wrote an article, and the article said, you know, it was so profound about that was it said Atlanta church hires a psychic medium.
I read it.
Like, no, like my church did hire me and don't work for the church. I don't even, you know, this isn't a part of that, you know. But what was so profound about it, because literally I'm sitting there and I don't know that this article has been printed. And my phone starts blowing up, right? And people are booking readings. And I'm going like, I'm looking at my phone like, well, what happened? Like, what, you know, I mean, like, I'm talking about schedule just getting booked. And so it's kind of like, you know, when it says like what the devil meant for evil, right? Like God will turn it around for good. But what I believe, like what God was showing me really was like, I will use it all, right? I will use it all. I will use it all to get who I need to get to you. I will use all of it. And so there has been, initially, I feel like there was resistance, but my church is like, they're so supportive. Like I've had like a young man called me a couple of days ago and he said, hey, I was talking to my aunt and my aunt was like, she wanted to see a medium. And I was like, oh, I know exactly who you're going to call. There's a young lady at my church and da-da-da. And I just was like, oh, that is like, That is so awesome. That is so awesome. Yeah. So there's been some resistance, but like I've never, I'm like, I don't read the comments. I just keep walking.
Just keep walking. Now that's a word.
Listen, all by itself. Right?
Whatever your gift or your purpose is, I say just keep walking.
Just keep walking. Yeah.
Yes. How do you care for yourself? How do you nourish yourself? How do you rest in all that you're doing? Given that you're an empath and all this work can be very draining. What is your best self-care practice?
I'm going to be completely transparent and tell you, like, I'm still learning that part. Like, that part is and maybe that's the Virgo, I don't know, like, how we can be. So
I love being a Virgo, but
so I'm really learning how to do that part. Like Mondays are supposed to be my day off. But I was telling my best friend, like, there's really no such thing. Like, there's no, you know what I mean? Like, there's no, but I'm learning. I think for me, being around my friends, being around my family is really kind of how I rejuvenate. It is my rest for me, laughing with them and talking to them. That is really what brings me a lot of peace. And sometimes I just, I'm home by myself sometimes, or I'm at the store and I have some time to myself. And so I just have those moments where I'm just talking to God and just kind of getting some clarity and asking for guidance and asking for direction. But my business coach challenged me to get a routine. And so I've been working on getting a routine that includes some really heavy duty self-care.
Yes.
Yeah.
Wow, thank you. I mean, we're coming to a close on this particular episode. I wanted to know, what are some people that whether it's ancestors or theologians, people that guide you? What are some of the works of people past or present that you lean on for your own spiritual development?
Yeah, definitely, so many people. My father, we have great talks, right? My mother too. My mother's like my best friend. My father is my father, right? Like, it's so funny. Like I
met your mama.
Yeah, and it's like I can call her, like, sometimes I'm like, she's Maggie, she's Velma, she's mama, depending upon what I need, right? My daddy is daddy, period. Like I have never called that man Ernest a day in my life. Like, so but my father, we have really great conversation, about everything. Dr. Daniel Black, he's amazing. I know you know Dr. Daniel Black. He is phenomenal. His speaking, he goes live every Friday on Facebook, and his teachings and even him helping me understand this gift. And really, so I want you to know that I am what is called a psychic medium.
Okay.
And I don't know, you've heard the term before.
I have, yes.
What does that mean to you when you hear that term?
I think what probably comes to mind first when I hear the term psychic medium is one who has the ability to see things, to understand things outside of time limitations. One who might see into the future, one who may be able to resurrect things from the past and bring them into the present. So I think of it as kind of someone whose time constraints are a bit more fluid than other people.
Where does this gift come from, and what did it look like before we got here?
Well, we come from people who understood that all people have gifts.
Right.
That everybody who comes into a community bears some gift, from some spiritual gift. We are shaped that way. And this notion of being a psychic medium, and of course they would use a different word in ancient Africa, but this notion of what it means to be able to see invisible things would not have seemed nearly as rare to them as it does to us. And truthfully, among ancient cultures, period, whether African cultures, Native American cultures, etc., this notion that one could talk to spirits, that one could conjure spirit, that one could see into the future, that one could resurrect information from the past, was a fairly common thing. Okay. In many African communities, they call them seers.
Okay.
these people who had sight.
So I would have been a seer.
A seer,
okay.
yeah.
Yeah, in ancient Africa, this is what we did. Like, this would not have even been a conversation or a question or a debate or, this is just who we are. My Bishop O.C. Allen, oh my gosh, like, it's probably too many to name, and a lot of times I talk to my grandmother all the time. My grandmother passed, and there are just sometimes where I will just sit and I will just cry because I miss my grandma, and then sometimes, in some way, somehow she will show me. My grandmother's name was Dorothy, and I swear, at the times when I'm missing her the most and I'm thinking about her the most and I'm probably having a moment and I'm crying, like, something will happen in a reading, like very shortly afterward, it'll be like my grandma showed up, right? See, I'd be like, the person's grandmother died, and I'd be like, what was your grandmother's name? They'll be like, Dorothy. I'd be like, okay. So there's just, so many to name, but I think closest to me on a daily, that's usually where I'm drawn to.
Dr. Foster, 2 questions.
Yes. Yes. 2 questions. Yes.
Always coming to, how do we get the people as ministers to tap into their own gift, as well as lean on the gift of the community? People, because I believe. I love the village model. I believe Sabufu Some is one of the books, a lot of her books actually, is Falling Out of Grace. It was one of the books that I always lean on. And she talks about, in Becoming too, Dr. Black.
Yes, oh my gosh, yes.
How the village, how there were so many of us and everyone had their gifting and everybody knew, especially when a child is born, why they had come to serve the community, and being intentional and being aware of their purpose and actually cultivating that gift. And so the 2 questions again is, how do we get the people to lean into the gift, their purpose in life, or recognize and lean, and also lean on to those who have a particular gift to move the community forward?
I think, for me, honestly, it is and has been about leading by example, right? I think and I believe that is what Jesus did. I believe that is what Jesus was coming to teach us. I don't necessarily believe that Jesus came to be the exception. I believe that Jesus came to be the example of what we could be and could do if we made the conscious decision to walk in our humanity and our divinity, right? To not be so consumed with our humanity or our ego, but also be able to tap into the divinity of the greater works that we came to do. And so for me, it is really about just leading by example. I don't necessarily believe in, like, you can, it's like how we get inspired, or we see people and something creates a spark in us, or something fans that flame in us, right? Because I don't believe that you can make people do anything, but I believe that you can inspire them to do everything. And so for me, it is definitely just kind of leading by example, to say, I'm going to show you all what I do, and I'm going to do it, and hopefully somebody can hold on to that, or can see, I can do that too, especially if we have, my whole point of my doctoral work was really about people who have these gifts, right? Whether it is a psychic or a medium or an empath or a clairvoyant or astrologer or a tarot reader or whatever, but they also love Christ, right? Or they also want to walk in the ways of Christ, that there's not a decision that has to be made, right? The church doesn't get to decide, whether or not you can do both. And that's what it's been for me, that I can do both. I can love Jesus and operate in this gift, because my work was based on James 1:17, which says, every good and perfect gift is from above. All the gifts are from God. And what Dr. Black told me one day, which I thought was so profound was that, the universe isn't going to be a moral compass for you to do good, right, on your gift. That's a choice that you have to make. So I can be a shady medium. I can be a great medium. I could be a shady mechanic. I can be a mechanic for the people. I can be a shady politician. Like, the universe doesn't decide that. Like, we decide that, right? And so for me, it is really, I choose to operate in the light, because I always tell people this isn't my gift. Like, I'm the vessel, right? I am the vessel through which God said, I can trust you to be able to do what I'm asking you to do, to build this part of the kingdom. That's what I believe. And as far as like the community, I think it really starts with us individually. And as we're doing all of our work individually, we tap in, to the communal efforts of just really growing our gifts. I mean, that's what I think, but yeah, I always tell people, like, I get inspired. Like, I'm inspired by Beyonce. I don't care what nobody say.
Hello. Virgo.
Like, her and Michael Jackson, right? Like, ultimate Virgos.
All day, baby.
To watch their work effort, work ethics, to be committed to their gifts. And I had a psychic tell me one day, she said, for the next year, and this is kind of when I started doing everything, she said, for the next year, she said, I want you to wrap yourself around this gift. She said, I want everything to be around this gift. She said, and I want you to do that, commit to doing that. And I was like, I had never heard that put that way before, right? But I was like, I want to do it. And that's what I did, you know what I mean? And continue to do, is to just say, I had a real estate license, I let it go. I had a teacher certificate, I let it go. Because it wasn't in alignment with what I knew that God had told me. And then a friend of mine, she's a tarot reader. She told me one day, she says, but she didn't even know that I had this gift, and I had been seeing her for years, like going to see her for tarot. And she tells me, she says, I don't know what the spiritual gift is that you're sitting on. She goes, but I'm supposed to let you know that it's the only thing that God's going to support. She's like, everything else you'll be doing in your own strength. Child, listen. Listen, right? Listen.
Wait a minute.
That made it easy for me, because I was like, okay, God's not going to support the real estate, right? I'd be doing that in my own strength. God's not going to support me doing the teaching, I had my guidance counselor certificate. Like, I want to do the thing that God's going to support. That's what I want to do. If God's going to get behind this thing, like, that's the thing that I want to do. And that just made it, just became easy. Like, it was a no-brainer after that. Because we know what God can do. Right? Right? We know what God can do. Am I right? Nah. And I know what I can do. And I know, I'm like, I want what God got for me. That's what I want. That's what I want. I want what God has.
I gotta wrap this thing up. It's getting so good, because you came around my block.
Yeah.
Left it. You Listen, if I ain't get a message today, I got it. Listen, you came around my corner about 3 times. I got it. I got it. Just keep walking.
Yes.
Lead by example.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the only thing God is going to support.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. That thing that you're called to do.
That thing that you're called to do. Yeah.
Jesus.
It blessed me.
Well, you just blessed me. And Dr. Foster, thank you for spending this time with us. It's so necessary. What would you offer to the people, especially as we wrap up 2020, even though this is 2021 and coming into 2021? What would you offer the people, the community moving forward?
I would offer, I think for me, if I learned nothing else this year, in the midst of 2020, in the midst of COVID and, just the protest and everything that was happening, is that time belongs to God. And that for me, it was about surrendering time to God, right? Because it's like we kind of, a lot of us, so many of us, walked into this thing with our own plans and our own, agenda, thinking this is what's going to happen and this is what it's going to be. And quickly, we found out very quickly into 2020 that it was like, no, none of that's happening, right? But it didn't mean that 2020 was canceled by any means, because we saw some amazing, I know I did, saw some amazing things, and God keeping God's promise on so many of those things. But I just think that even though we're going into 2021, and my hope is that people don't necessarily think that a magic wand is going to just, be waved and things are going to change instantly. But just remembering that time belongs to God. Yeah.
Ashe. Tell the people where they can find you. Tell them about the sites and the store. Tell them, give them information.
Yes. So I am on all the platforms at Lakara with the Gift. And that's Instagram and Facebook and I think LinkedIn. My store and my website is lakarawiththegift.com. We sell all types of what I call tools that people can buy. We have ancestral candles, and we have sage, and we have crystals. And a lot of times people don't necessarily know what to get. So being a doctor, I get to write a prescription, right, for them in terms of what they may need for their journey. The store is in Atlanta. We do have our flagship store in Atlanta, Lakara with the Gift, and we are over in Sandy Springs. And so, I do readings myself. A lot of people, they're often asking, if I book a reading, am I going to get to meet with you? And I'm like, yes, you will be meeting with me. And so, yeah, that's where everybody can find me.
Awesome. Again, thank you, Dr. Lakara Foster. And she ships. She's in Atlanta. I've gotten her candles. I've gotten all of them, and they amazing. They smell good. They burn well. Please check her out and bless yourself with the gift. You have tuned into yet another episode of TTYL or Not. Thank you for joining us. Theology talks you like or not. Peace. Bye-bye, everyone.
This season of TTYL or Not is being funded by Independence Public Media Foundation and supported by Good Pitch, Doc Society, and Love Now Media. Don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel, TTYL or Not, and click on notification for updated episodes.